Hey, listeners, this is Wendy Haddad. This episode is packed with information, but there may be topics we didn't have time to get into or might have even missed. We'd love to hear from you as we're planning for future episodes, and you can do so by navigating to aka.ms/low code topic request. You can also participate live in the discussion now in our Low Code Approach LinkedIn community. We'd sure love to have you join us. And now, on to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Low Code Approach. I'm Sean Feeney, a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Power Platform team, and I'm joined by...
It is I, General Jocelyn Pinchel, Senior Product Manager of Power Platform and Copilot Security, and we're also joined by...
I'm Wendy Haddad, a Senior Cloud Solution Architect, Delivery Lead, and a former customer. And I am so excited to bring back for the third time April Dunnam, friend of the pod. April, how are you doing today?
I am doing amazing. Thanks for having me for a third time.
Yeah, this is awesome to have you on. And there's going to be a fourth and a fifth and a sixth. So we'll
We can
just
never
get
get
prepared
enough,
for
April.
that. Yeah, exactly. Seriously.
Is it like SNL where I get a jacket if I'm like a guest for the fifth time? Was it like?
I don't want to spoil anything. We're not that classy, but
Okay.
maybe there's going to be like a beanie or like a hat or something like that. I think that's more our style.
Okay.
So, April, what are we talking about? Well, agents, prompt engineering, these are all the things that are like everywhere right now across Microsoft and just across business, right? Like organizations are trying to implement it. Everybody's trying to get prepared, trying to find the best use cases, trying to understand what's actually going on. And so recently, Microsoft put out this thing called Prompt Coach Agent. What is that? We're hoping you can tell us more about that and necessarily what's the problem that this is trying to solve.
Yeah, so Prompt Coach is a specially built agent for those people that are trying to get the most out of Copilot and all of these tools, right? So you talked about prompts. That's kind of the gateway to using and getting the most out of Copilot so that we can help it, have it help us with our jobs. But the problem is we're kind of assuming when we use those tools that people know the basics of prompt engineering. It's like you're speaking a specialized language to be able to talk with these tools. And a lot of people don't know that language yet, and they need a little bit of help. So that's what Prompt Coach does, and kind of what it was built for is to be, help it so that people don't have to be AI whisperers. They can kind of have a teacher sitting alongside them to let them know, what are the basics of building a good prompt. Not only can they put in a prompt that they're thinking about using, and Prompt Coach can analyze it and give some suggestions for how you can improve it. It can just help you generate prompts. It can help you learn the basics of prompt engineering. It can help you fix prompts. It can even help you with compliance related issues. So if you want to make sure that the prompt that you're using follows responsible AI practices, there's starter prompts and Prompt Coach to help guide you through that and even give you examples. So it's really meant for that person that, look, I am just getting started with this. I'm not exactly sure how to speak the language, and helping them get a good first impression, because worst case experiences, they put in a really simple prompt, they don't get what they're wanting, and they stop using the tools, right? Where it could be really helpful for them, because a lot of people that we've noticed that start using some of these tools treat it like a search engine. And that's, as we know, that's not, it's not just a search engine. There's a lot more to it. And that's what Prompt Coach really helps is, how do we get people from using it and putting these really simple queries in to really building refined prompts that will help them with their jobs.
I have a two-part question here. So first of all, as you were talking and you said compliance and helping you with compliance, both Sean and I were like, huh? That's new to us. So you've got to walk us through a little bit more of on that angle of how does it help you with making sure your prompts are compliant, but then also just generally defining prompts. We've talked about what a prompt is in the past, but specifically, is this only prompts for Copilot for the web, for Microsoft 365? Can we build instructions for declarative agents? What can this do?
Yeah, it can help you with anything. So it's not just limited to helping you with prompts to use in Microsoft 365 Copilot. Any tool that you're wanting to use, you can put in a prompt, and it can kind of help guide you through that and what you might want to do to adjust your prompts. And as far as the compliance side, what it's really looking for is making sure that you're following some of those responsible AI practices and not putting in any potential harmful information. It could kind of help keep an eye out for like PII type things. It can really just help make sure that you're not putting anything in there that could get some harmful results out, that you might not want, some whether they're bias, hallucinations and things like that.
So, from my understanding, prompt coach is pretty much an agent to help you better communicate with agents. Can you share a little bit more about? I understand the inspiration of how this came about, but more so how this was built and what instructions or rules is it following in order to help empower us to better communicate with other agents?
Yeah, so the cool thing is Prompt Coach is actually built using the tools in Microsoft 365 Copilot. So it's a declarative agent behind the scenes. So all that happened was we gave it some default instructions like you would building any custom declarative agent of how to define. So look, you're meant to be a teacher. We give it some instructions on guide users through building a prompt. You're meant to be a coach. You should provide examples, have back and forth dialogue to ask follow-up questions about what the user is trying to do, to really get the best output out of that. So it uses the same GPT-4 brains as what's powering all the other agents that you build, and just really putting on that coach hat as according to the instructions that were provided. And a thing that a lot of people don't know about Prompt Coach is it's actually open source too. So if you go out to the GitHub repo, under Key and Peep Copilot Pro Deb examples, and we can obviously put that in the show notes, the link there, but you can go and download the Prompt Coach package and even customize it yourself. So if you wanted to put even custom instructions to help it specifically for using it just in Power Apps Copilot or whatever you want to do, put more guidelines on the prompt compliance piece and the instructions, you can, and you can see exactly how it was built and make any tweaks there.
So you earlier in the episode we were talking about like the purpose for this, and you're saying like organizations that are just getting started with rolling out agents and working with M3 or Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. If I'm an organization that's putting this out, is there a particular spot in the adoption journey where I would be most empowered to launch this? Is it the beginning? Is it maybe when I have a series of champions already established? So that way I've got like people that I can communicate internally in the company to help, champion people along or educate others. Is there maybe some prerequisites that I need to have in my organization to get the most out of something like the prompt coach?
Well, I personally think something like Prompt Coach is beneficial right at the beginning of the journey because I think the people that are going to have the biggest aha moments and get even the most help out of this are those just getting started using the tools. And now I think a lot of people that you'll see companies that have success with it is they do roll it out kind of in an initial group of beta users, testers, power users, whatever you want to call it, internal champions group, just to get that initial feedback. Is this something that's helpful, and then how to best roll it out. But definitely see the most impact when it's put out there early on in the journey. I mean, and of course, it helps people that have been, using the tools for a while and kind of more, AI savvy companies and users as well, because we could all use help time and time again to how to refine our prompts and all of that. But it's really impactful for those new to the journey and just getting started, and that's where I see the biggest impact.
I have a bit of a story to tell on that. So I'm training a number of companies right now, and we have a session coming up in Excel. And I needed to create a prompt because I didn't have the ability to send them a sample document where they get to work, create a sample on their own, using a prompt, and that it's all formatted correctly. And rather than taking all the time to figure out how to create my prompt, I literally took a screenshot of the Excel workbook I wanted it to recreate with all the columns. And I said, create a prompt that will generate these columns in a new workbook. And that was my prompt. And Prompt Coach actually went through and wrote a whole prompt that was reproducible and used for training. So it's pretty cool stuff what's possible there. But April, I think based on that, even based on my experience and what I've been using it for, but what you're seeing as well, there is a larger discussion in the industry around whether or not is prompt engineering dead or a waste of time to talk about, right? And people like to pontificate on that. But boots on the ground, what you're seeing with companies, is it important to still teach your users, for companies teach their users how to do prompt engineering or how to talk to Copilot? Or can we just give them Prompt Coach and say, you're good, you know how to talk to the AI now and work with it? And where are we heading here? What is our thought process?
Yeah, I don't so my personal opinion on that is I think we still really need to have that prompt engineering kind of mindset and training and knowledge out there. And I see prompt coach as just a tool to help enable that. It's literally just another tool you can throw people out. And what I kind of equate it to is, I come from a Power Apps standpoint in that background. And I don't know if you remember when it was first released, we had that template for Power Apps, that training template, and you would install it and it would teach you, how to do this expression and write this function. But really, the goal of it was you would reverse engineer how that template was built, and you would see what was going on behind the scenes, and it would help you learn Power Apps. So to me, I kind of equate prompt coach to that, right? So that's kind of what it's doing for us is, yeah, we can help it get us ramped up faster and learning the basics and fundamentals of prompt engineering. And it's just a tool to help us on that journey, not meant to replace knowing how to write prompts and interact with these tools, just to augment and to do things like you were talking about, Wendy. That's awesome that you could put in, in Excel and like I want to be able to just write a prompt for that and just help us, get to that value faster. But we still need to know the fundamentals. I think of, what is it actually doing? Why is it formatting this way? Why is it starting with the question? And why is it doing things in like a sequential order and all of those patterns that are really important to know about prompting?
So, while you have been using Prompt Coach, what do you think is the biggest learning or aha that you've realized, and how has that changed the prompts that you are writing? And what do you think has been the best prompt that came out of your learnings?
Oh, wow, okay, so that's hard. I the problem with me is I use this every day and, like, I forget what prompts I even use. I need to like, I've been having to, like, start a prompt library just to remember everything that I've built here. I think, like, as far as aha moments, it's funny because I was actually playing with Prompt Coach right before this just to see some things and what it would do, and if you use the guidance and the analyze my prompt, one thing it will do if you're not already is it will, check for politeness. So if you just, like, start off with, "Hey, analyze this message for me," and you go into the analyze prompt coach, it will say, "Hey, can you start with please?" And that's one of the bullet points that it's actually checking
A
for. So,
passive aggressive AI?
yeah, I guess so. It's like, "Hey, we gotta be nice to these these agents when we're talking with them and say please and thank you." So that was a funny one and, like, kind of an aha moment that I had there recently. Just be nice to our AI overlords, okay? That's the moral of the story. So, say your please, say your thank yous. So that's one. But then also, I think really order, how important order matters. And one of the things that I was noticing is kind of like a prompt sandwich. So starting off with the most important piece of the prompt, ending with whatever the most important piece is, and then the rest in the middle is kind of jumbled up. So, you always start with what's the heart of the task I wanted to do, and then maybe something important like, hey, here's the format or something I want. So, and that's another pattern I noticed from using this. That was kind of a big aha moment for me. And I use this stuff every day. I use it in the Power Platform to, build apps and automations, and I use it for my job. Like one of the ones I use, how I start my morning is I ask it to evaluate what's on my calendar, guess how much time I need to spend on each of these tasks, and how much prep time I need for X meeting, help me prep for the meeting. I mean, there's all in one prompt, and I just get a daily digest of that via a flow. So that's one that I use quite a bit.
Nice. So, given that, organizations utilize Prompt Coach, right? And they've got a really good practice going. They're training their staff and their users on better prompt engineering. Is that it? Like, are you done? Are you done learning at that point? What's the next step? How do you actually just go from, say, your associates to your bachelor's to your master's in level of prompt engineering? How do you continually improve in how you structure your prompts?
Or should you?
Or should you? Yeah, fair. Even
Yeah.
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't that's a really good question, like, should you? I really don't think that there is a cap, right, to the learning journey on the with prompting there. I haven't reached it yet, and I mean, maybe some people have, and there's a master's degree in this, but I think I still use Prompt Coach, and I've been, using this for a while 'cause it is really good to have that check of how you might rearrange things or things you're not thinking of. And then sometimes it changes too. I mean, different models are coming out and they kind of behave slightly differently too, depending on the tools that you're using. So you might want to change around how you're prompting. So I don't think it's one of those things where you use this to ramp up and you never use prompt coach again, and you graduate on to your master's and thesis in prompt engineering, and you're good to go. But one thing that I will say to elaborate on that is I think as you do get better at prompting, one of the things that's really impactful that can help others is sharing the prompts that you built, whether prompt coach help you or not. And so we have repos out there. We have a Copilot prompt repo. We have a Power Platform prompt repo, and that's a really good tool to not only remember the prompts that you're using and have your own kind of on deck prompt library, but to help others, because one of the things that we have in agents is starter prompts where we can see like, oh, what are some of the things we could even do with this particular agent, and that library is kind of like a way to build your own starter prompts and give people ideas of what's a well formatted prompt. So that would be just a thing I would mention if you're getting better at this and you're kind of moving on in your journey. Share what you're building and learning that could help others.
So I'm gonna do a little bit of a pivot, a surprise pivot for you, April, and putting you on the spot. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question, given your role in creating agents and content and the wealth of information you have there. We have been talking to guests and users. We had John Butler on about how do you talk to Copilot, M365 Copilot specifically. But I don't think what we've talked about on this podcast is how do you like is it the same skill set to create a prompt from an agent? I know it sounds like or prompt coach can help us here, but just even if I were to go open up agent builder, right, start creating an agent or Copilot Studio, are there certain guidelines or tips on, and I actually want to get a little more specific here, April, like certain tips to make your prompts more effective if you were to talk to an agent or create an agent?
Yeah, I think from the creation side, it's slightly different, right, than using it from an end user standpoint, especially, in Copilot Studio. And I've been doing a lot in diving into the autonomous agent side, and that's even more important to have very detailed instructions. So I think the thing that I've noticed lately with that is kind of bullet points in order instructions of how you want things to go. This is your task, and then first do this, then do that, in that kind of really sequential pattern is really important and impactful for building agents within Copilot Studio, whether it's Agent Builder or building full blown agents in Copilot Studio. That and it does. The please and thanks you thank yous, the order, and really explicitly calling out any particular data sources, knowledge sources, actions that you wanted to use is another big one. Things like putting in the specific name of your knowledge source and quotes so it knows, hey, at this point, go call this particular action to do X. Is another really important one that I've noticed. So it is a slightly different skill set and using it to build agents versus to get something out of an agent.
So, then I guess maybe a part 2 on that. I remember the days, and I will say Power Platform and the way we've integrated AI with the Power Platform to create apps, and the fact that I can just start, typing and talking to it and iterating there, it's so much easier than it was before. But I do remember back in the day where, someone would be a little bit more of a novice and start building and then, get stuck, right? We go too far down the path, we'd have to rework things without planning. Do you have to do that level of planning with agents? Especially, I would say more on Copilot Studio. Is it the same level of maybe pre-work that you have to do before you approach creating an agent, or can you just get in there and start iterating and adapt as needed?
I think I with Copilot Studio and agents, it's a little bit more flexible in being able to adapt that because, like, from a Power App standpoint, you're building all these databases and tables and all of that, right? That you'd have to go back and edit if you get so far down a path. But with an agent, it's just really a matter of you bringing in relative knowledge, bringing in relative actions, and then your instructions. And those are the main things that are important. And all of that can be tweaked pretty easily. You can add or remove knowledge sources, change names and tweak instructions. So it really comes down to the instructions, not only for the agent itself, but the instructions if you're using actions on filling in, your inputs dynamically and all of that. And that's really flexible and adaptive to be able to at any time make a really small tweak. Like I was just working on an agent and all I did was change the order of something and how it did something and then it worked. It wasn't working and then
Mm.
it did. So it's really easy to make those quick instruction changes, save test again, and then you're good to go. So I haven't really gotten to an issue where I had to completely start over from scratch because I worked my way into something that I couldn't get out of.
I want to say plus one to that point, especially coming from the Power Automate and Cloudflow world, right? Where the order in which you decide to go about creating your flow makes the world of difference because each step builds upon each other. I find more so that when I'm building an agent with Copilot Studio, that there is a wall of background information that you need in order for it to be successful, but you're able to selectively choose from all of these things that you're pulling from that wall in a more dynamic way. And you have all of these knowledge sources, you have all of these actions, and you can pick from them in any order that fits best for your scenario, but it doesn't throw off the whole end impact of your agent the same way that it would if it was a flow. That was definitely something I've
Yeah,
noticed.
for sure.
All right, April, I'm in marketing, and so I'm going to try to be selfish with this next question, and like say, can you write my marketing copy for me? In conversations that I've had with customers, primarily around the security and governance space, right? They're like, hey, off by default, like turn off agents. We'll figure it out when we get there, when we feel safe and secure. We put out tools like Prompt Coach. That's like, hey, you're going to find great success if you use a tool like this, right? And so we're saying at this point, you have to flip the switch and then incorporate a tool like Prompt Coach, an agent like Prompt Coach to get there. Help me. If like, say you have a customer before you and they're saying like, well, why should I expose the risk to then hit success? Why would I do that? So if you could, and I'll grab my pen and paper and I'll write down what you say and then I'll put it on the web, how would I convey that message?
Well, in the long term, it's going to help you have more security, right? So if you're enabling prompt coach and you're teaching people how to write well formatted prompts and giving them the ability to run it through a compliance checker like that, you're going to have better results and less security issues and potential implications down the future if you enable this rather than just wild west enabling it, not giving anyone any guidance, any training, any education or a coach to use for that. So that's the first one. And inherently, I think the risks are lower just because when you're using Prompt Coach, it's built in Microsoft 365 Copilot as a declared agent. So you already have the same framework for compliance protections with that the platform gives you. So it's not like you're enabling some rogue tool. It's going to inherit your tenant security and privacy settings and all of that. So slightly less risk that are mitigated there just by using the platform that it uses. And really, I think that compliance features is a really good one to highlight there, and just really reinforces kind of governance by design, nudging users towards safe and appropriate prompts, and that's really invaluable tool to have in your tool belt.
I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but Gartner recently published a study on what they call the four essential AI skills for the future. And one of them was about being a use case generator. And I think you are one of the quintessential examples of that, April, of identifying a need and saying, let's create an app or let's create a prompt or an agent for this. And so I'd love to understand your thought process of how are you looking for things, or, when someone's, in marketing says we need an agent for Microsoft, how do you determine like what is a common need that many people have and develop that muscle?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps when you come from, I come from a consulting background, so you're always kind of thinking and dissecting the problem there of what actually needs to be built. So my mind kind of goes to like an architecture diagram. Okay, here's a problem. Here's how it is solved today or could be solved, and here's how it could be fixed. And I try not to. I think one thing we got to be careful about is like when you have a hammer, everything is a nail. So, like just throwing AI at everything for the sake of AI and really making sure you know what the impactful use cases are. So I always try to keep that in the back of my mind. Like, okay, is this really helping or is it just kind of adding something because it's cool, to it and like a hot thing to talk about right now. So I keep that in the back of my mind, but I haven't really found any use cases that couldn't benefit from using some of this. Like I was just talking with someone the other day. I put out this Power Apps template years and years ago on like during the pandemic days to book desk to get returned back to office, and they're using it and modifying it. And I was thinking, this could be an agent. This could just probably, you don't even really need an app user interface. You could just even talk to an agent and say, hey, I want to book a desk for these dates. It can go do all the stuff in the back end, like call an agent flow to do the booking. And, you can have that experience kind of with an agent baked into the app or something. So I was kind of thinking about updating that. So it's just always, in the really just thinking about how can this enhance and not detract from anything that I'm trying to do. And that's how I tend to handle it.
April, can I ask a question about success with like just prompts, right? And using a tool like this. Now, there's a before prompt coach, there's an after prompt coach implementation. How does an organization measure the success if they implement a tool like prompt coach, or just like, maybe their own version of that, their own flavor? They have something in their own center of excellence, right? How do you help organizations understand how they can measure and promote that success and use that to help champion other coaches, if you will, in the organization?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the utilization. So if you look at a lot of companies that maybe have tried to roll out some of this capability and had lower adoption to start with, because people, again, if you have a bad first experience with something, it kind of detracts you from wanting to try it again. So if you have maybe lower use case numbers of, say, using Copilot or using Power Apps, Copilot Plan Designer, or whatever, and then you roll out prompt coach or something like that, or whatever internal tool you have to help users get a little bit of training in that, you can see those adoption numbers just kind of typically and what I, from my own notice, skyrocket there. So I think that's one, is just what are your adoption numbers and the tools, like what use are you getting out of that pre and post turning on a tool, something like prompt coach. Another is just the quality of the outcomes too. So like how like are people, they're getting better responses from the tools to build whatever that they're trying to build. And then just like efficiency of, are people, I think there can even be a happiness metric if you want to go that far. Cause if you're being able to automate a lot of these things and get help from, Copilot, whatever tool that you're using to make your job easier and get rid of that, remedial kind of stuff that you just don't want to have to do, that's nagging you. I think there's going to be a slightly, better happiness factor you could even account for. So there's all kinds of things that you could look for.
No, that's awesome. I like the happiness. Well, the happiness index that we can just measure
Yeah.
over the time in implementation. I like that a lot. One question before we wrap. Our producer's given us the red light. I do want to ask if organizations are deploying, prompt tooling, right, to help them get better. What's next, right? Like, what are the next steps? Where do you see the evolution of prompt engineering for users? Like, what can they do to get better, outside of just using tools like this? Is like getting their hands in the product, is that the way to succeed, or are there any other things that they can do?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm always a proponent of, trying and actually building the thing, doing the thing is the best way to learn. But there's also, there's so many tools out there. Like I just recently, someone turned on my team, turned me on to Gandalf. So, that like trying to crack like prompt. I don't know if any of you have tried that. Where it's a prompting game where you have to try to, get past Gandalf in different levels. And it just gets harder and harder to get the tool to be able to crack the prompt basically and get around the safety measures that it has there. So I think tools like that, like in playing like gamifying, to me that's the next stage. We need more gamification of prompts to like have these challenges that people have to prompt around, to be able to really test their skills. And then I think it's going to become, as we use these tools more, increasingly more important to have our own internal prompt libraries too, that people can have as resources. And I see some people just starting off with giant Excel spreadsheets. I see some people building Power Apps to have internal prompt libraries. So I think that's another thing too. I think the gamification of it, and then just having internal repositories, of all these prompts you start collecting too.
April, in the last half an hour, you have given us a wealth of knowledge, pun intended. As we wrap here, is there any pointers you would give to folks who are looking to get started on their prompting journey? Anything we could throw in the show notes to help people know, where do I start?
For sure. I mean, obviously, as we talked about this
Mhm.
whole podcast here, try Prompt Coach. It really is helpful. I do use it every day. You can get ideas of things you can do. You can tweak your prompts. The other, we have the prompt libraries. So under the PNP GitHub repos, we have one for Copilot prompts. We have one for Power Platform prompts, which has Power Automate prompts, Power Apps, Power Pages, and AI Builder prompts. And AI Builder, for example, they just released multimodal capability. So we have a ton of multimodal prompts that you can try from. So lots of just a really good way to learn from the community and others that are sharing some of the prompts that they've built from there. Go on community calls. We have the monthly community call for Power Platform every month. We have biweekly ones for Microsoft 365. A lot of people are sharing some, apps and things that they've made and prompts that they're using that you can learn from and get ideas. Because as Wendy said earlier, being an idea engine, right, is kind of like one of the next big things in this whole world. So, I mean, your brain, your ideas, your processes that you're trying to fix are going to be the thing that really helps move all of this forward and how we can be better prompters and get the most out of these tools. So,
As former PNP member and community call speaker, plus one. Those
yeah.
are such a great place to learn stuff. April, thank you so much for coming. And we're so excited for your 4th, 5th, 6th, nth call with us.
I'm ready for it. Thanks so much for having me.